the alien colony of Varric, for it had always been a place of strict balance. The dominant species, the Gorvrex, were an apex predator that ruled the planet with absolute ferocity. Towering, reptilian beasts with razor-sharp claws, thick obsidian scales, and the strength to crush armored vehicles with a single swipe, no species dared challenge them. The native Zalari, an intelligent but physically weaker species, had long lived in fear of the Gorvrex. Even with their advanced technology, they never dared hunt them. The balance of nature dictated that the Gorvrex reigned supreme. That's why Commander Zelvrek couldn't believe what she was seeing. She had been monitoring the human outpost ever since their arrival 6 months ago. The humans were peculiar creatures, so fragile-looking yet alarmingly adaptable. They had colonized a small stretch of land at the outskirts of the Gorvrex's hunting grounds, and despite the Zalari's warnings, they insisted they could handle the dangers of the planet. And now, there it was, the impossible. Through the high-resolution drone feed, Zelvrek watched as a human, dressed in a simple, dirt-stained jumpsuit, crouched beside the carcass of a slain Gorvrex. The beast's body lay motionless, its enormous head lolling to the side with lifeless, glassy eyes. Deep claw marks raked its side, indicating it had been in a vicious struggle before it fell. But that wasn't the shocking part. The human had a sharp, serrated blade in one hand, and in the other, a chunk of raw, steaming Gorvrex flesh. He brought it to his mouth, took a bite, and chewed. Zelvrek recoiled in horror, her iridescent blue skin paling. Asterisk, he's eating it. Asterisk, she rapidly interfaced with the drone's sensors, ensuring the feed wasn't malfunctioning. But the readings were clear. The human, one identified as Private Daryl Boone, according to their colony records, was consuming the apex predator's flesh with the casual ease of a field worker taking a lunch break. Her claws trembled over the control panel. This wasn't just unnatural. It was insane. The Zalari had observed humans eating a variety of creatures before, but those were mostly docile, easily domesticated animals. Never something as terrifying as a Gorvrex. Zelvrek activated her communicator, her voice strained. Send this feed to the council immediately. The humans. They are doing something incomprehensible. A tense silence followed before another voice crackled through her headset. It was Minister Drelak, the chief overseer of interspecies relations. Commander, are you absolutely certain of what you are witnessing? Yes, Zelvrek hissed. The human killed a Gorvrex and is consuming it. Without hesitation, a long pause. Then Drelak spoke again, his tone grim. This changes everything. Zelvrek didn't understand at first, but then she remembered the ancient warnings from the Zalari's own past. They had seen it before, an intelligent species that not only survived among apex predators but hunted them. Those species did not stay small. They did not stay weak. They became something else entirely. Predators. Her gaze returned to the human on the screen. He finished his meal, wiped his mouth, and let out a satisfied sigh. Then, as if sensing he was being watched, he turned his head slightly toward the drone's direction, a smirk playing on his lips. For the first time in her life, Zelvrek felt a chill of fear run down her spine. Zelvrek couldn't tear her eyes away from the screen. The human, Private Daryl Boone, stood up, stretching his arms as if he had just finished a casual meal instead of consuming the flesh of one of the most feared predators in the galaxy. His movements were slow, deliberate, and completely unbothered. The sheer audacity of what he had done sent a wave of unease rippling through her body. The Gorvrex were not just any predators. They were the top of the food chain, undefeated in their dominance for thousands of years. Even the Zalari, with all their technology and strategic prowess, had never successfully eradicated them. Their weapons could kill individual creatures, but to truly eliminate the species would require mass destruction on an ecological scale, something the Zalari refused to do. Yet here was a lone human, standing over the corpse of a slain Gorvrex, wiping blood off his chin like he had just finished a casual afternoon snack. Zelverek's hands trembled as she switched the drone's recording to a live feed, broadcasting directly to the Zalari High Council. "You need to see this," she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. Within seconds, the high-pitched hum of an encrypted connection established itself. The holographic forms of the council members materialized before her, their expressions already twisted in concern. Minister Drelak spoke first, his voice tight. "Explain." Zelvarek gestured toward the feed. "This human just killed an Ada Gorvrex. Alone, with nothing but a primitive blade." Gasps rippled through the council chamber. "Impossible," one of them muttered. Another leaned forward, squinting at the feed. "Are you certain the human was responsible for the kill?" Zelvarek rewound the footage, showing the moment Boone had leapt onto the Gorvrex's back. The beast had thrashed violently, its talons carving trenches into the dirt, its jaws snapping inches from the human's limbs. Yet Boone moved with terrifying efficiency. He avoided every lethal strike, slipping past the beast's defenses, and with a single brutal movement, he drove his blade deep into the Gorvrex's throat. The creature had gurgled, shuddered, and collapsed. Dead. The chamber went silent. Minister Drelak inhaled sharply. He took down a Gorvrex in close combat. "With nothing but a knife," Zelvarek confirmed, barely believing the words as they left her lips. The council members exchanged glances. Fear, uncertainty, disbelief. "We have studied humans extensively," one of the elder counselors murmured. "They are adaptable, yes. Aggressive when provoked. But this," he pointed at the image of Boone on the screen, "this is something else. They are changing," Drelak said grimly. "Their kind has only been on this planet for 6 months, yet one of them has already adapted to hunting an apex predator. What happens in another year? 5? 10? A dreadful silence followed. Zelvarek's mind reeled. Humans were not supposed to be like this. Yes, they were unpredictable. Yes, they had a terrifying capacity for violence. But they were also supposed to be soft, fragile creatures. They were meant to rely on tools, machines, weapons, asterisk, not their own bodies, asterisk. And yet, Boone had used nothing but his bare hands and a blade to bring down a creature that had terrorized the Zalari for centuries. "What do we do?" one of the younger counselors whispered. Minister Drelak exhaled slowly, his gaze locked on Boone's image. "We need to determine if this was an anomaly or the beginning of something far worse." Zelvarek's mind was still spinning as the council debated furiously. Some argued that Boone was a mere outlier, an exceptional warrior among humans. Others believed that if one human could do this, it was only a matter of time before more followed. But one thing was clear. This changed the balance of power on Varric 4. She cut through the noise. "We need to bring him in." The council fell silent, turning their attention back to her. Minister Drelak's gaze narrowed. "You want to interrogate him?" Zelvarek's throat tightened. "Not just interrogate. Understand if humans are evolving to hunt the Gorvrex. We need to know how and why." She pointed at the screen. "The Zalari have lived in fear of these creatures for centuries. And now a single human has slain one and eaten it like it was nothing." She turned to Drelak. "If this is a glimpse of what humans are becoming, we cannot afford to be ignorant." Drelak considered this for a long moment before nodding. "Approved, but handle this delicately, Commander. We do not want to provoke them." Zelvarek stiffened, saluted, and turned off the transmission. She exhaled slowly before opening a direct line to her field team. "This is Commander Zelvarek. I need an immediate extraction team dispatched to Human Outpost Delta. Subject, Private Daryl Boone. Approach with caution. He is to be detained peacefully if possible, but do not underestimate him." Her team acknowledged the order, and within minutes, a Zalari hovercraft streaked across the sky toward Boone's location. As the craft neared the humans' camp, Zelvarek's anxiety deepened. The camp itself was small. Humans were still in the early stages of colonization, but it was clear they had adapted quickly. The structures were simple but reinforced, and automated turrets lined the perimeter. Their defenses weren't standard energy weapons either. No, Humans favor projectiles, primitive yet brutally effective. Her team landed a few meters from the camp's entrance. Several humans, armed and wary, emerged. A tense silence followed as the Zalari soldiers cautiously stepped forward, weapons holstered but hands ready. Then, from the center of the group, he appeared. Darrell Boone. He was bigger than Zelveric had expected, not in size. Humans were still physically smaller than Zalari, but in presence. His movements were relaxed, unbothered, as if he had been expecting them. His gaze flickered over the Zalari team, then settled on Zelveric. He smirked. "Let me guess," he drawled. "You saw me eat the damn thing." Zelveric felt her pulse quicken. How could he be so casual about this? She straightened. "We need to talk." Boone's smirk widened. "Yeah? Or you need to study me?" Zelveric flinched. He wasn't wrong. The humans were far too perceptive for their own good. Boone exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. "All right," he muttered, rolling his shoulders. "Let's get this over with." And just like that, he stepped forward, unafraid, unchallenged. Zelveric swallowed hard. This human wasn't just adapting. He was thriving, and that scared her more than anything. Zelveric kept her posture rigid as Boone strolled toward the Zalari transport. His confidence was unsettling, not forced bravado, not arrogance, but something deeper, a knowing confidence, the kind that came from experience. The other humans watched in silence, their hands resting near their weapons, but not making any sudden moves. They weren't afraid for Boone's safety. If anything, they looked amused. As he climbed aboard the hovercraft, Boone turned to his fellow colonists and grinned. "If I don't come back, tell HQ they better send someone who can cook." A few chuckles followed, but nobody looked concerned. Zelveric gestured for the pilot to take off. As the craft lifted into the air, she studied Boone's face. He was relaxed, looking out at the sprawling wilderness below as if he were taking a scenic tour, not being transported for questioning. She cleared her throat. "You don't seem very surprised by this." Boone turned to her, raising an eyebrow. "What? You think I didn't notice your little drone buzzing around?" Zelveric's jaw clenched. Of course he had noticed. How? The drones were designed to be undetectable to primitive life forms. He must have seen the irritation on her face, because he chuckled. "You guys keep underestimating us." Zelveric folded her arms. "You ate a Gorvrex." Boone's smirk widened. "Yep, you hunted a Gorvrex. With a knife. Also true." Zelveric leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Why?" Boone exhaled slowly, stretching his arms behind his head. "See, back on Earth, humans used to be on the bottom of the food chain too. We weren't the fastest. We weren't the strongest. Hell, compared to a bear or a lion or even a pack of wolves, we were pathetic." He leaned in slightly, his voice lowering just enough to send a chill through her. "But we figured something out. Apex predators? They get comfortable. They get used to being on top. They stop thinking. We don't." He tapped his temple. "We outlasted them. We learned what they feared. And then, one by one, we took them down. With spears. With fire. With persistence." He gestured toward the landscape. "The Gorvrex? They ain't special. Just another big, mean son of a bitch that doesn't realize the world's changing." He smirked again. "And we love changing the rules." Zelveric's skin prickled. "You're saying humans evolved to kill apex predators." Boone shrugged. "It's what we do. We don't just survive in hostile environments. We make them ours." Zelveric sat back, stunned into silence. She had assumed the humans were reckless, foolish for settling near the Gorvrex. But Boone wasn't reckless. He was confident, because he knew what was coming. This wasn't just an anomaly. This was a pattern. She swallowed hard. "You're planning to hunt more of them, aren't you?" Boone chuckled, cracking his knuckles. "Oh yeah, and pretty soon, we're going to need a bigger knife." For the first time in her life, Zelveric truly understood what fear felt like. The hovercraft glided over the dense, mist-covered forests of Varric, its engines humming softly as Zelveric tried to process what Boone had just told her. She had spent years studying apex predators, war tactics, and interspecies survival strategies. But humans? They defied every expectation. Boone leaned back against the hull of the craft, arms folded, looking as if he were enjoying a casual ride rather than being transported for questioning. His confidence was unnerving. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't intimidated. He was comfortable. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. Zelveric's claws flexed against her uniform. You're seriously planning to hunt more of them? The Gorvrex. Boone grinned. Oh yeah, but not just me. A chill ran through her. She narrowed her eyes. What do you mean? Boone tilted his head slightly, giving her a look that made her feel as if she were the prey, not the interrogator. You think I'm the only one? Her breath hitched. He wasn't an anomaly. Boone laughed, shaking his head. Lady, my whole unit has been watching these things since we got here. We've been studying them, tracking their patterns, figuring out how they fight. The only reason I got the first kill was 'cause I got impatient. Zelveric's stomach twisted. You mean there are others? Of course. Boone smirked. You think I'm the only one who wants a Gorvrek steak? A sharp static buzz interrupted their conversation, and the pilot's voice crackled through the comms. Commander, you're going to want to see this. We're picking up multiple life signs near Human Outpost Delta, and they're all Gorvreks. Zelveric's spine stiffened. Boone's smirk didn't fade. If anything, it grew. The pilot continued. They're converging on the colony, but something's wrong. Zelveric frowned. What do you mean wrong? The pilot hesitated before responding. They're running. Zelveric's blood went cold. Gorvreks did not run. They hunted. They fought. They dominated, but the heat signatures on the screen told a different story. A horde of them, at least 24, were stampeding away from the human colony, their movements erratic, desperate. And then she saw the second set of signals. Humans, moving fast, pursuing, hunting. Boone chuckled, shaking his head. Guess they started without me. Zelveric's heart pounded as the realization crashed over her. The balance of power on Varric wasn't just shifting. It was already gone. Zelveric's claws dug into the armrest of her seat as the hovercraft raced toward the colony. The sensor display was clear. Humans were hunting the Gorvreks. She watched in stunned silence as the infrared signatures moved across the screen. The massive predators, once the undisputed rulers of this world, were retreating. It was unthinkable. Boone stretched his arms, clearly enjoying her reaction. Told ya, they're not special. Just big, mean, and stupid. Zelveric turned to him sharply. You don't understand. This isn't just about you proving you can kill one. The Gorvreks are a keystone species. If they go extinct, the entire ecosystem could collapse. Boone shrugged. That's nature. Adapt or die. She clenched her fists. You don't get to decide that. Boone's smirk faded slightly. We're not trying to wipe them out, lady. We're taming them. Zelveric stared at him, unsure if she had misheard. Taming? Boone nodded. Look, extermination's a waste. You don't kill off something this strong. You figure out how to make it useful. A heavy silence settled between them. The hovercraft sped over the colony, giving Zelveric a clear view of what was happening below. Her breath caught in her throat. A group of humans had encircled 3 Gorvreks, forcing them into a trap. The predators snapped and roared, but they were outmatched, not by strength but by strategy. One human stood at the front, a massive rifle in his hands, but he didn't fire. Instead, he raised a device and pressed a button. A pulse of energy erupted from it, causing the Gorvreks to shudder violently. Their movements became sluggish, their aggression dampened. Zelveric's eyes widened. You're pacifying them? Boone grinned. Something like that. Neural disruption. Knocks them off balance. makes them more suggestible. One of the humans approached a stunned Gorvrex and calmly placed a harness around its thick neck. The beast tried to resist, but its movements were sluggish, uncoordinated. Zelvarek felt like she was watching the impossible unfold. "You're domesticating them." Boone chuckled. "What did I tell you? Apex predators get comfortable, but humans? We're never comfortable. We change the rules." A sick feeling settled in Zelvarek's stomach. This wasn't just about survival. This was conquest. And the humans had already won. Zelvarek couldn't tear her eyes away from the scene below. The once mighty Gorvrex, creatures that had dominated Varric for thousands of years, were now stumbling under the control of mere humans. The beasts thrashed weakly, their massive tails dragging through the dirt as their handlers tightened the harnesses around their thick, scaled necks. She had seen war. She had seen subjugation. But this was something different. The humans weren't just killing the Gorvrex. They were breaking them. Boone leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees as he watched the scene unfold. "See, the trick ain't brute force," he said, his voice casual, as if discussing the weather. "Brute force is what dumb animals rely on. You gotta be smarter than the beast you're fighting." Zelvarek's mouth felt dry. "You're turning them into weapons." Boone chuckled. "I prefer assets." A shiver ran through her. Down below, one of the humans, an older man with a rugged, scarred face, lifted his wrist communicator and spoke. His voice crackled through the hovercraft's comms. "Alpha Team report. Status on the first batch." Another voice responded, this one female. 3 fully restrained. 2 dead. Excessive resistance. Understood. Begin conditioning. Boone grinned. Here comes the fun part. Zelvarek barely had time to process before she saw what he meant. The restrained Gorvrex were fitted with headgear, thick, metallic bands that wrapped around their skulls. Humans moved with eerie precision, adjusting the devices while others tapped commands into their wrist consoles. Then, with a sharp click, the devices activated. The effect was immediate. The Gorvrex, once thrashing wildly, suddenly stiffened. Their eyes, once filled with primal rage, flickered. Their muscles trembled as low, guttural growls rumbled from deep within their chests. They wanted to resist. Every instinct in their bodies screamed to fight. But they couldn't. One of the harnessed beasts, easily the size of a transport shuttle, let out a guttural snarl but didn't attack. It stood there, nostrils flaring, claws twitching, but it didn't move. A human stepped forward. Slowly, carefully, he raised a gloved hand and pressed it against the beast's snout. The Gorvrex flinched, but it didn't strike. Zelvarek felt her stomach churn. It was obeying. Boone exhaled like a man watching a well-executed play. "Beautiful, ain't it?" Zelvarek turned to him, eyes burning. "You don't know what you're doing." Boone smirked. "Oh, I think we do." She shook her head. "You cannot control them forever. The Gorvrex are more than just animals. They're a problem we just solved." Boone leaned back, stretching. "We figured out their brain waves, found their aggression triggers, and flipped the switch. Now," he gestured toward the scene below, "now they work for us." Zelvarek stared at him, a cold dread settling into her bones. She had feared that humans would be wiped out by the Gorvrex. She had feared that humans would hunt them to extinction. But she had never considered this. They weren't removing their threats. They were assimilating them. Zelvarek's claws dug into her palms. "You don't understand what you're playing with. If you lose control..." Boone cut her off with a chuckle. "Lady, losing control is how you dive in humans. We don't do that easy." She inhaled sharply. "What do you want, Boone? Why are you doing this?" Boone's smirk faded just slightly. His eyes darkened. "What we always do. We build. We expand. We conquer." The word hung between them, heavy as a war drum. For centuries, the Zalari had feared the Gorvrex as the ultimate force of nature. But Zelveric realized the truth too late. The humans weren't afraid of the monsters. They were the monsters. And now Varric belonged to them. Zelveric felt the weight of inevitability settle over her. The humans had already won, not through brute strength, not through superior technology, but through sheer, relentless adaptation. They had turned the greatest predators of Varric into nothing more than tools. And the worst part, they were just getting started. The hovercraft descended, landing near the colony's perimeter. As the ramp lowered, Boone stood up and stretched, stepping off with the lazy confidence of a man returning home after a long day's work. Zelveric followed hesitantly, her mind racing. The Zalari had spent centuries believing the Gorvrex were an unstoppable force of nature. Now, humans had dismantled that belief in a matter of months. A group of humans approached, dressed in a mix of military gear and rugged exosuits. The one in front, older, with a grizzled beard and a rifle slung across his back, gave Boone a nod. "Took your time?" Boone grinned. "Had to stop for a chat. Our Zalari friend here wanted to know what we've been up to." The older man turned to Zelveric, his eyes unreadable. "And what do you think of our little operation?" She hesitated. "You're tampering with forces beyond your understanding." The man chuckled. "Yeah, people said the same thing when we started riding horses, when we domesticated wolves, when we built the first cities." He gestured toward the restrained Gorvrex, now standing eerily still under the effects of their neural dampeners. The only difference now? The beast got bigger. Zelveric felt a chill crawl up her spine. A younger soldier jogged up, tablet in hand. "Commander, we finished the second round of conditioning. The big one, the Alpha, is responding well." Boone raised an eyebrow. "No resistance?" The soldier grinned. "Oh," he tried. Nearly took off Perkins' arm. "But we turned up the frequency, hit the right neural pathways, and now—" He tapped a command into the tablet. A loud boom echoed from a reinforced pen near the colony's center. A massive gate slid open, revealing the largest Gorvrex Zelveric had ever seen. Easily over 10 meters tall, its scales gleamed under the artificial lights. Its breath came in slow, steady huffs, nostrils flaring. Then, with a single command, the beast lowered its head. Submissive, controlled, Zelveric's blood ran cold. She turned to Boone. "What are you planning to do with them?" Boone chuckled. "A lot of things." The older commander folded his arms. "We've got colonies to protect, resources to secure, and let's be real, there's a whole galaxy out there full of things that don't want us around." He nodded toward the Gorvrex. "That used to be a problem. Now, it's our solution." Zelveric's mind reeled. Humans weren't just surviving on Varric 4. They were building an army. She had to warn the Council. But deep down, she knew the truth. It was already too late. Zelveric's pulse pounded as she stood amidst the towering humans and their newly tamed monsters. The Gorvrex, the apex predators that had ruled Varric for millennia, were now servants to these invaders. The sheer audacity of it left her breathless. She had always believed humans were reckless, a species that thrived on chaos. But now, watching them bend nature itself to their will, she realized the truth. They weren't reckless. They were inevitable. The older commander turned to Boone. "We should get moving. The test run's done. It's time to take them into the field." Zelveric's claws tensed. "The field? You mean combat?" Boone grinned. "Bingo." She shook her head. "Against what? The Zalari have respected your presence here. You have no enemies." The older commander let out a dry laugh. "For now." Zelveric felt her stomach twist. "You're preparing for war." Boone shrugged. "Not war. Insurance." Her mind raced. Asterisk, this isn't just about Varric 4. They're thinking ahead, preparing for future conflicts. Expanding asterisk. She turned her gaze back to the massive Gorvrex Alpha, standing in submission. A beast that once would have torn through a Zalari warship without a second thought now stood waiting for orders. She gritted her teeth. You can't control them forever. They're predators, not machines. Boone smirked. And humans are neither prey nor gods. But we win, one way or another. A distant rumble shook the ground beneath them. The restrained Gorvrek stirred, their massive claws scraping against the earth. One of the human techs looked up from their console. Commander, we're detecting movement from the southern ridge. High-energy signatures. The older man frowned. Gorvreks? No, sir. Zalari. Looks like an armed patrol. Zelverek's breath caught. Her people. She had no idea what the patrol had seen or if they understood what was happening here. But if they came in armed, if they perceived a threat, her blood ran cold. Boone cracked his knuckles, eyes gleaming. Guess we'll see how well they work in the field after all. Zelverek's heart pounded. She had to stop this. Because if the Zalari and humans clash now, if the humans unleashed their new weapons, there would be no going back. The humans had changed the rules. And the galaxy wasn't ready for what came next. Zelverek's mind raced as the distant hum of Zalari patrol ships grew louder. The humans stood relaxed, their weapons at the ready. But she saw it now. This wasn't tension. This wasn't fear. It was anticipation. Boone exhaled, rolling his shoulders like a man about to enjoy a long-awaited game. The massive Gorvreks beside him shifted, responding to some unseen command. The neural dampeners hummed, keeping the beast docile, for now. Zelverek turned sharply to the older commander. You have to stand down. If the patrol sees what you've done here, they will report back to the High Council. The man raised an eyebrow, and her throat tightened. Asterisk, and they will see this for what it is. A military escalation. A declaration of intent, asterisk. She gritted her teeth. You don't want this fight. Boone snorted. See, that's where you're wrong. He turned toward the ridge where the patrol ships were approaching. We're always ready for a fight. The ground rumbled beneath them. The Gorvreks twitched, their primal instincts struggling against the neural overrides. They knew something was coming. So did Zelverek. The Zalari ships broke through the clouds, their sleek, insectoid frames gleaming under the twin suns. They hovered above the colony, scanning, assessing. She could feel the pilots inside, their minds racing as they processed the impossible sight below. Humans, standing shoulder to shoulder with the deadliest predators on Varric 4. The comms channel crackled to life. Unidentified forces. This is Commander Valus of the Zalari Defense Fleet. Explain your actions immediately. Zelverek stepped forward, forcing her voice to remain steady. Commander, this is Zelverek. Stand down. This is a... Boone cut her off. An experiment. A successful one. The comms went silent. Then, Valus's voice returned, sharp and cold. You are in violation of interspecies law. The Gorvreks are a protected keystone species. You will deactivate your neural suppressors and release them immediately. Boone sighed. See, this is why we don't ask for permission. Zelverek turned to him, desperate now. Don't do this. Boone's grin was gone. In its place was something colder, sharper. This was always going to happen, he murmured. Might as well get it over with. He lifted a small device from his belt and pressed a button. The neural dampeners pulsed, and the Gorvreks moved, not with rage, not with mindless instinct, with purpose. The largest one, the Alpha, lifted its head toward the Zalari ships and growled, not in defiance, in obedience. The patrol ships reacted instantly, weapons charging, their pilots scrambling for tactical analysis. But it was too late. Boone gestured lazily toward the sky. Let's see what they can do. The Gorvreks attacked. Zelverek's scream was lost in the chaos. The world erupted into chaos. Zelverek barely had time to register what was happening before the Gorvreks lunged. The Alpha, a towering beast of muscle and scale, launched itself skyward with a terrifying burst of power its claws slashing at the air. The Zalari patrol ships reacted instantly, their energy shields flaring to life. The lead vessel fired first, a precise plasma burst aimed at the creature's exposed flank. But it didn't matter. The Gorvrex twisted mid-air, its neural dampeners keeping it locked onto its target. The plasma blast barely slowed it down before it collided with the ship. The impact sent a deafening boom across the valley as the craft spiraled, its stabilizers failing. Zelverek's breath caught. The Gorvrex, it wasn't just fighting, it was coordinating. The remaining Zalari ships scrambled into evasive maneuvers, their pilots attempting to regroup. Another ship fired a series of rapid kinetic rounds, hoping to deter the beasts. But the humans were already moving. Boone barked a command, and the ground units sprang into action. Soldiers in exosuits dashed forward, aiming their neural remotes at the remaining Gorvrex. The signals pulsed, reinforcing commands deep into the creatures' minds. And just like that, the apex predators of Varric became weapons of war. The second Gorvrex charged forward, its eyes locked onto another patrol ship. It jumped, higher than any natural creature should have been able to, its claws tearing through the ship's thrusters. Flames burst from the vessel as it spiraled downward, crashing into the jungle below. Zelverek's heart pounded. This wasn't a skirmish. It was a demonstration. The Zalari pilots knew it too. The remaining ships veered off, retreating at full speed. The message was clear. They were outmatched. Boone exhaled, watching the ships disappear over the horizon. He rolled his shoulders, cracking his neck. Thought they'd put up more of a fight. Zelverek turned to him, her body trembling with fury. You planned this. Boone grinned. Nah, but I sure as hell ain't complaining. She clenched her fists. You knew they'd come. You wanted them to see this. Boone's smirk didn't fade. What's the point of having a new toy if no one knows you've got it? Her blood ran cold. This wasn't about defense. It wasn't about survival. It was a message, a warning to the Zalari, to the rest of the galaxy. The humans had arrived, and they had no intention of staying in their place. Zelverek stood frozen in place, watching as the burning wreckage of the Zalari patrol ship smoldered in the jungle below. The last of the retreating vessels had vanished beyond the horizon, but she knew the message had already been sent. This was no longer just about Varric 4. The Zalari High Council would see this as an act of war. She turned to Boone, her hands trembling with barely contained rage. You have no idea what you've just done. Boone gave a casual shrug. I think we got a pretty good idea. Her voice rose. You think this is a victory? You think the Zalari will just let this go? Boone smirked. Nah, I expect them to respond. That's the point. Her stomach twisted. You want a war? He let out a short laugh, shaking his head. Lady, humans don't want wars. We just don't fear them. He turned, motioning for his men to regroup. And between you and me, I think your people are going to think twice before picking a fight with us. Zelverek felt sick. This wasn't just a military escalation. This was calculated. The humans had come to Varric as settlers, outsiders looking for a home. But now, they had something more. They had weapons no other species could counter. They had tamed nature itself. The Gorvrex, creatures that had once defined the natural order, were no longer the apex predators of this world. The humans were. Boone turned back to her, his smirk replaced with something more dangerous. Something colder. You Zalari spent centuries afraid of the Gorvrex, he said, his voice steady. You thought they were unstoppable, untouchable. But we took one look and saw something else. Zelverek clenched her jaw. And what did you see? Boone stepped closer, lowering his voice. Opportunity. A shiver ran through her. The Zalari had feared that humans wouldn't survive on Varric 4. Now she realized the truth. They hadn't just survived. They had claimed it. And soon, the rest of the galaxy would understand what that really meant. Zelverek stood in the aftermath. The smell of burning wreckage thick in the air. The jungle, Once a place of primal balance, now felt unnatural. Asterisk wrong, asterisk the mighty Gorvrex, once the rulers of this land, stood idle under human command. The world had changed, and the humans had won. Her communicator buzzed, snapping her back to reality. The transmission was encrypted, but she didn't need to see the sender to know who it was. The High Council. She hesitated. If she answered, if she reported what had happened here, it would trigger immediate retaliation, a full-scale military response. But what if that was exactly what the humans wanted? Boone watched her, arms crossed, as if he could see the war playing out in her mind. "Go ahead," he said. Tell them what you saw." Her fingers hovered over the communicator. "If I do," she said slowly, "the Zalari will send a fleet. A real one, not a patrol. They will not allow this." Boone's smirk didn't fade. "Let them come." She exhaled sharply. "You're insane." Boone's expression darkened. "No, we're prepared." A distant rumble echoed through the valley. Zelvarek turned and felt her blood run cold. From the far edge of the colony, more Gorvrex emerged. Dozens of them, each one fitted with the same neural dampeners. Controlled, directed, obedient, the humans hadn't just tamed a handful. They had built an army. Zelvarek's breath caught. This is impossible." Boone stepped beside her, looking out at his new war beast with a quiet sense of satisfaction. "Nah," he murmured. "This is humanity." She turned to face him, anger flaring in her chest. "And what happens when you lose control? When the Gorvrex turn on you?" Boone gave her a sidelong glance. "Then we adapt like we always do." She stared at him, her mind racing. She had always thought the Zalari were the peak of intelligence in this sector, the masters of survival and diplomacy. But the humans didn't just survive. They changed the rules. Her communicator buzzed again, the urgent call from the High Council still waiting. This was the moment. If she answered, war would come. If she didn't, she was condemning her own people to watch, powerless, as humanity expanded without resistance. Boone turned to her fully, his expression unreadable. "So, what's it gonna be?" Zelvarek looked at the communicator, looked at the Gorvrex, looked at the future, and made her choice. Zelvarek stared at the communicator in her palm, the weight of history pressing down on her. One call, one report to the High Council, and war would be inevitable. The Zalari would never tolerate this. Humanity rewriting the natural order, bending apex predators to their will, turning them into weapons. But the war was already lost, wasn't it? She looked up. Boone stood beside her waiting, not nervous, not anxious, waiting because he already knew the humans had no intention of backing down. And why would they? They weren't just surviving on Varric 4. They had claimed it. She clenched her fists. "Do you even understand what happens next?" Boone exhaled. "Yeah, we keep moving forward. You keep trying to stop us. And in the end," he gestured to the rows of massive, obedient Gorvrex. "We win." She could see it now. The inevitable expansion. The first wave of human-controlled Gorvrex spreading beyond this valley, beyond the colony. The next generation of human settlers arriving, not as vulnerable pioneers, but as conquerors riding war beasts, unstoppable in their march across the planet. And after Varric 4, the rest of the galaxy. The Zalari thought they were the pinnacle of civilization, but they had never faced a species like this. A species that didn't accept limits. The communicator buzzed again, urgent, impatient. The council wanted answers. Zelvarek inhaled sharply. If she answered, the Zalari would send fleets, armies, warships. The humans would fight, and they would adapt. They always did. Maybe they would be pushed back at first. Maybe they would suffer losses. But they would learn, and the next time they would be unstoppable. Boone studied her, his smirk fading just slightly. For the first time, there was something else in his expression. Not amusement, not arrogance. Understanding. He knew what was going through her mind, and she hated him for it. Slowly, she lowered the communicator. She had made her choice. The humans had already won, and there was nothing the Zalari could do to stop them. Boone nodded once, as if acknowledging her unspoken decision. Zelvarek turned away, staring into the horizon where the Zalari fleet would never come. Varric for belonged to humanity now, and soon, so would everything else.